Allora, possiamo...
We can now start. It is now time for Stefano Levi Della Torre. What can we say? Well, he's an architect. He writes essays. He wrote a lot about the Jewish thought. His speech is entitled "A Memorial Site for the Story of Good." I would like, first of all, to thank you all for the invitation to this extremely interesting conference. So the architect in me will now try to see whether we can start with a new project. I have realized that it's easier to talk about evil than about good. When you talk about evil, as for instance during the Memorial Day on the 27th of January, we feel we have a credit towards the evil people because we are better than they are. But when we talk about what is good, we feel the opposite. Once we say what should be done, we need to find out how to do it. So instead of talking about what is evil, we wanted to talk about what is good, but this is more difficult. When you talk about the good, we have two temptations. One is, well, the one that Anna Bravo talked about, that is to say, to go towards something that is transcendent. And if someone is good in every aspect of life. It's, well, almost a saint, an angel. Otherwise, it doesn't work. So this is one of the temptations you have when you talk about good. Then the second temptation, which is not far from the first one, is that we talk about this kind of things in terms of just people. Whereas here we talk about situations that produced just effects. So that's the difference, actually. If we, for instance, look at Garibo in Milan, who actually spread the Garden of the Just in many parts of Europe. Well, this is not a criticism, it's just a characteristic of this area. That is to say, this is the kind of orientation we have chosen. We do not want to talk about good people, but rather about situations that created effects of justice. So this is exactly the kind of characteristic of this project. I think this is actually its guiding concept. So what are the processes according to which a group of people, or even individuals, create events that we can define as just? Well, it's not easy when people say, I couldn't do anything else. I do believe that this actually hides a conflict because those who actually do something just needs to be in a way satisfied in doing it, because our mind needs some satisfaction, needs some compensation, so to speak. And when someone does something just, well, this kind of action, this kind of deed could even be very dangerous, and that implies that the fact that it involves people who made different choices, his family, his friends, and so this, in a way, is something which is not just, is an injustice in reference to the people around them. So, well, this is a kind of outlaw justice. This goes against the institutional context, the political situation, and this needs to overcome the people who want to do something just need to overcome two main difficulties, that is to say, responsibility towards those who make different choices but are involved nevertheless. And then the internal struggle between what is the common sense that is encouraged, for instance, by propaganda and turns into stereotypes. And, well, they give the impression that each action is full of meaning and values. We go against those people because they are our enemies, they are dangerous. So all propaganda strategies go against certain values. So I really believe that there is some form of reticence in a way, but I do believe that this is also the silence surrounding the confrontation between this sense of satisfaction and narcissism and this satisfaction. And this is actually the complication that emerges in these words, "I couldn't do anything else." It's something that is fatal. It was, well, the only possible choice, even though there is this internal conflict. So these are the difficulties that just people encounter. I believe that this approach that was underlined when we were talking about the device that means a certain scenario, a certain context that creates, that produces a just deed. Well, this is the fundamental element also when we wanted to plan something. Well, there are just people who were actually quoted also here in Nonantola, so it is important to identify these people who actually this is right because they deserve that, but it is a situation that is a collective situation moving towards a certain direction and producing positive conformism. As Anna was saying, in Denmark there was a majority of people who went in a certain direction. So also those who would have chosen a different direction could not abandon the same path, so they would not be able to, for instance, go against the majority. So this is the device that emerges. In Guido's speech, he gave a strong representation of the conflict between the film Sus the Jew, and on the one hand, and the other, the reaction of the community of Nonantola to that film. So I would suggest that it would be interesting to find out whether we can create more than one device, two devices that are in a way in conflict, two different sets of coiled lines, one against the other. One is the device of the fascist propaganda, represented by the film Sus the Jew, and the other one is the device of the reaction of the community of Nonantola. And I would say that the representation of the situation is that of two different devices, one against the other. They are close one to the other, but they are also in two opposing situations. And this is the theme we should work at. So this very complex picture includes also the matter of a representation of a group as opposed to the individual. If we can give a face to a person, then the situation changes. It's not the same when you talk about a group of people. So you need to actually go beyond the stereotypes that actually erase the human faces. But the group and the number of people is extremely important. So we talk about the representation of good for the future, a memorial site for the future, and these are very interesting slogans, but I believe that anyone who's aware of this representation, here as elsewhere, should make different sets of reflections. So we talk about the welcoming of refugees and of people in need. And here, when we have difficulty in talking about the good, is transferred to our current times and the problem of incoming refugees. So we cannot confuse the episode on which we are working here in Nonantola. But there is anyway a connection with Lampedusa. If we talk about the opportunity to accept the arrival of these people. So there is this very topical situation. So, well, and this is, I think, really unavoidable. And at the same time, we talk about a Jewish story. We talk about Zionistic activities. And then, which is also unavoidable, we needed to have a look at what happens in Israel. So these are the directions we have to manage, which, as I said, are unavoidable. These two things go hand in hand. And then, we need to see where is a person who has received a good treatment, who has been treated nicely, then is not just as kind to other people. So this is, in a way, this problem of seeing someone as a good person, and well, it is not true that a victim is better than other human beings. So this approach, I believe, is in a way some sort of crime in itself, because persecution, in a way, we could also think that persecution is a good thing, because in the end you produce a better humanity, because victims are better than other human beings. So that would be the underlying concept. The fact that people think that victims are better than the others, this is obviously very wrong. If we persecute a lot of people, we will produce better people. Well, this is obviously not true. A victim could become even worse than those who have persecuted him. So, well, if we take the right path, then we need to avoid all these mistakes, this absolute good, the victim, the sanctification of victims. When I was young, I used to teach at high school, and once my students needed to write an essay on what is good and what is evil. And unfortunately, there were also, but most of the students wrote about a man who was beaten up by someone. So the beater was the bad guy, and the one who was beaten up was the good guy, the victim. So we need to avoid this because there are no set values on that. For instance, the French Revolution is basically a positive fact. But French revolutionaries cut off heads, for instance, to those who wrote about the rights of women and citizens. So these people deserved to be beheaded, according to the revolutionaries. So, well, there are always different aspects and different faces to the same fact.
Ecco, quindi questo, cioè uno dei...
So this is, well, one of the most important philosophers of the last 2 centuries, Giacomo Leopardi, used to say that each word, each object, each event, even common words, can produce different ideas in different people. That is to say, that a person receives a word according to his or her own experience. So this is the big problem of transmitting values. If you have in front of you young people, kids, or grown-ups, your words will be received in different ways. Different echoes are created. So that's the big complexity of our task. I'm not very, well, I don't have any speaking notes, so I'm talking just about this and that. But the question of the issue of the device, there is one aspect we need to bear in mind, following what was proposed, is to consider the fact that individual conscience is a device in itself. That is to say, it's not really an individual conscience. Everyone's conscience is actually the sum of something common that we have brought within ourselves. When we feel we did something wrong, it's just like we had an internal community judging what we are doing. So we cannot say that just a person is always just in what they do, because there's an entire community within each of us. So, well, what we need to do is to understand this device of conscience, moving, changing. It's a moral conscience, so to speak, and there is always a reference in terms of a collective judgment that is confronted with a different collective judgment, which is the one outside the self. In Nonantola, we have an identity between the internal collectivity or community and the external one. So what's the conflict between the different elements? The conscience, that is to say the internal community judging you, and the external community, that is to say the propaganda of the regime. So how do these elements interact? Why, for instance, fascists committed some deeds which were right towards the victims of fascism? So, well, we have these diverging communities that can be actually brought together. So what kind of conflict do these people live, experience? And I think all these phenomena should be studied, if possible. So from the planning point of view, I believe that we need to reflect upon the whole memorial contest linked to Villa Emma, but also Villa Emma and its contest. So this is extremely important for the entire project. So that map with the red and blue dots, this is a very good starting point. How can we recreate this echo in the Nonantola contest? So this is extremely important. What kind of formal connections can we create in order to create this very complex device? So, well, there is this contest of the whole aspects, all the aspects. And these dots, dots on the map, these are very important. And this calls for, as we did for some obstacles, some Stolpersteins, there's a need to create something which is positive, not negative. So there is this difficult to represent something that is good rather than something that is evil. Then, well, we need to have a memorial site which is functional, with all the organizational aspects needed in a place like that, but at the same time a certain symbolic power.
Che noi parliamo di un concorso e io penso.
So we were talking about a call for projects, and I would propose something. This call should be actually a group of calls. We need a call to define the general project. Then the activity of the steering committee, so to speak, should propose a, let's say, 3-year call or tender, maybe at international level if possible, where artists, painters, architects maybe, are invited to represent or to give an interpretation of this device. So the fact that this context or this call can lead to another chain of contexts and calls means that there will be deadlines to renew the proposal of this site of Nonantola as an interesting site that, starting from its own experience from the event in Nonantola, gives us some topical value to what happened. So we moved from the memory of the just to the memory of a collective device that produces a good effect. And this means being up to date also from the philosophical point of view. So we moved from what was, well, quite simple, the individual, who resembles in a way a hero. We underline, for instance, if he ran any danger, if his life or her life was in danger. We move to something which is quite fashionable, that is complexity. We talk about a network of relationships. We do no longer talk only about events, but about a network of events. So it is a project that should represent the complexity of relationships rather than the emerging of individuals. So, for instance, this three-year deadline at national or international level makes it possible to attract attention to this operation, to this action, on the basis of an event which is historically clearly outlined. And the idea is to give every 3 years a new interpretation, a new expression of these events through the works of artists. But we could also end up with too many works, artistic works, that would be scattered throughout the region. But if these works can be sold, maybe not all of them, some might become just the property of this memorial site. We can actually think about works that change in time in their form and style, and they are in a way recycled. Maybe artists can withdraw them. In Matera, there's a museum with the sculptures. They're all donations, and it's beautiful. Artists donated their works to the museum, and we could do the same kind of thing, to have a continuous activity, to have changing exhibitions on this topic that would involve also an interpretation, because we were talking about this important role of interpretation, starting from this fundamental point, which is at the center of the whole initiative. So, to summarize, the first possible choice is to move from the individual to the complexity in terms of whole relationships. Then the second aspect is this element of reflection, which is expressed through art, which is a way also to attract periodically the attention on this event. And then the importance of this figure from a certain historic event. There is a continuous updating and renovation of our reflections, not only for those who are directly involved, but also from a figurative point of view, mobilizing the minds of our time at international level. So these are my proposals after listening to the indication given today. So this would be a project as a whole, a project with a varying metabolism that does not change its starting point, that is to say, Vilaema, and reprocesses all the time these events, because this is a great lesson we might learn. That is to say, we can reprocess the same event in many different directions, in many different ways. At the same time, we also know that we need to manage this theme of refugees coming to us. So this is a very topical theme at the same time. Thank you.